Good evening from wherever you're zooming in from. My name is Eileen Stoll, and I work at the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And I am thrilled to be with you all tonight. It's great to see so many folks from across the country and in our beloved state of Washington. We're going to spend the next 2 hours getting to know each other, learning about athletes as leaders, and hearing about what makes you tick and what you're excited about. So let's just dive in, shall we? Before we dive into our content, I just want to acknowledge that the land that we're on this afternoon or early evening, wherever you are, is Indigenous land. And in my case, it's the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. I live in Olympia, Washington, and I'm on the land of the Nisqually tribe, a people who are still here, continuing to honor and bring light to their ancient heritage. I invite you to find out whose land you are on if you don't already know, and share it in the chat. And I will put a link in the chat for how you can do that. And then I'd be curious for you to share with us. What we're going to spend our time doing today is, we're doing it now. Welcome. We're welcoming you. We've had some opening remarks from Rosalie Fish, who I think may not be able to actually join us. So I'll just talk a little bit about her when we get to that place. And then I'll introduce Team Up and then get you going on Athletes as Leaders. We're really lucky to be joined by experts who have facilitated Athletes as Leaders with young folks and have worked with coaches and mentors, and you are in great hands tonight. And then we'll have some Q&A. So with that, I'd like to just briefly introduce our team. Like I said, I'm Eileen, and I work for the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I coordinate our prevention work, which includes Team Up Washington. It also includes working with our over 70 member programs all across the state of Washington. That includes culturally specific organizations, tribal programs, and programs that are based in every corner of our state. And all of the advocates and preventionists there are doing incredible work, and our assets in our work for communities to try and prevent violence. If you have not connected with your local programs, whether you're in Washington State or other places, I really encourage you to do that, and I'm happy to help you do that towards the end of the evening together. We are joined by Anna, our great tech guru. Hi, Anna. Thanks for being here. We're also joined by Rebecca Millemann and Monica Shell, both representing Harborview Abuse and Trauma Center. Do you two want to say hi real quick?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone.
Great. And so I will turn it over to them quite soon. But before that, I just want to welcome you to the team. So I hope you realized that you were coming on board and joining a team. So we're so happy to have you. We have this opportunity tonight to try something new that we haven't done before, which is to do a train the trainer of Athletes as Leaders. Before, we've been in person and have been able to do that and welcome you with open arms, literally. Tonight we're doing that figuratively, but we really appreciate you joining us. The main point of us being together is to build connection and strength by using the power of sports to end violence. And I really am excited that you all are joining us to do that. So the best way for us to really dive in is to just acknowledge that, you know, it has been quite the time over the past year and a half. And we're thrilled that come fall, sports are back. You know, it's going to look different. We're not quite sure how it's going to all shake out yet. We've still got a lot of adaptation and growing and learning to do, but you know, what we've learned is that that's just life and that change is constant. But we do know that this is a great tool to help you do that and build connection with your teams. Yeah, I think that's all I'll say for now. So I would like to start by just sharing a video that welcomes you to the team and sort of sets the stage for what we're going to dive into.
Team Up Washington uses sports as a platform to end sexual assault and dating abuse. Our initiative expands the reach of coaching boys into men and athletes as leaders to violence prevention programs for high school athletes. Since 2019, we've brought coaches, athletic directors, advocates, and mentors together for trainings on how to implement these programs to create change in our schools, communities, and in our homes. Our goal is to support communities to take on violence prevention across Washington state by leveraging the power of sports. Here's how.
1.5 million high school students experience physical abuse at the hands of someone they're dating nationally every year. We know that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will experience sexual assault before they turn 18. You know, the good news is that sexual assault and domestic violence and teen dating abuse, these are things that are 100% preventable. We can totally end this. And the way we're gonna get there, you know, the path towards that prevention is right here. It's with all of you in this room, and we can do that together. And it gives me so much hope and joy for our future.
All genders, all kids, all athletes, all students play a role in preventing violence and creating a safer community for everyone.
All of us who have had a coach that's inspired us know the power of that coach, the power that they have. The amount of time we spend around the coaches is just so much that when they are teaching us those character lessons as well, it can make a big difference in all of our lives.
The lessons they learn about dignity, self-respect, grace, how they carry themselves, are how they're going to take themselves into the world. And so we're not teaching them to be athletes, we're teaching them to be human beings.
We make a difference. And what I say and challenge each of you to do is to make that difference something that's powerful for our young people.
I think when athletes are coached with the expectations that they will positively innovate their own lives and their own communities, they will rise to these expectations.
Athletes have so much power, so much clout, so much influence over their classmates. Let's use every ounce of that we can to make a positive difference.
When we show athletes through example that they have the ability to change the world, they will.
Hundreds of coaches across Washington state have been trained and are implementing this in their community. Coaches and teams are having conversations about relationships and community standards across our state, and we are all the better for it. Join the team. Visit teamupwa.org and be a part of the movement for a better future.
Great. I love how that ends with Rosalie Fish. So when Rosalie joined us last week, she said that coaches light the fire of change. And I just, I've been thinking a lot about fire lately, and certainly in the Pacific Northwest. And I just loved the positive spin on thinking about fire as sort of a natural part of life and the rebirth and growth that happens as a result of it. And I really feel like we're all in this place of growth. And I just loved that metaphor. And I really appreciate how much when you strike that match and you light that fire for folks. I think the other thing to focus on as part of sort of laying the groundwork that Team Up Washington has in using the Athletes as Leaders curriculum and the Coaching Boys into Men curriculum is that both of them are really invested in and formed on connection. And that connection is the thing that is the answer and the antidote to suffering. So whatever, your work, however you do your work, whatever your questions are about how to make things better, the answer is almost always connection. And I love Athletes as Leaders as a model of bringing us closer to that, closer to each other, and really building the leadership, not just of ourselves, but of our young folks in our communities and our athletes as leaders. It's such a well-named, very apt title of the curriculum. So I'm really excited to bring Rebecca and Monica here to you to share with you that. If Rosalie was here, she was going to share a little bit about what the power of sports has meant to her. I wanted to share in the chat just an article. If you're not familiar with her work and her running career, I definitely encourage you to check her out. So I'm just going to drop in the chat an article that she just was a part of that sort of shares her story. And I encourage you after tonight to go back and read that. But this is a picture of Rosalie at our 5K that we had a week and a half ago, where we brought everyone to T-Mobile Park, the home of the Mariners, and did a 5K in service of our prevention work, and Team Up Washington is part of that. So it was a beautiful time to come together and connect. So with that, this is where I get to say, hey, y'all, thanks for joining the team and you can do it. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca and Monica, and they're going to walk you through the Train the Trainer.
Okay. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I know this is a very long day for folks. I know we are still in a pandemic right now, and I know that there's a lot of uncertainty about this school year coming up. And those of you who work in schools and who are involved with youth sports, you have been some of the most adaptable, essential workers that I have could ever imagine. And we appreciate your dedication and even still having this as a priority for your communities. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Millemann, and I do prevention work at the Harborview Abuse and Trauma Center. And I'm also one of the authors of the Athletes as Leaders program. And Monica.
Hi, everyone. Yeah. I'm Monica Shell, use she, they pronouns. I work under Rebecca at the Harborview Abuse and Trauma Center. I'm a recent grad of UW, or University of Washington, if you're not from here. And I just got my master's in social work, and I used to be Rebecca's student, and now I'm a full-grown adult doing work with her. I do want to say really quickly, if that's okay, Rebecca, that this training is meant to be interactive. So if y'all want to put your cameras on, that would be so nice, just so we can like see your faces. But again, as Eileen said, this is going to be recorded. So if you don't want your face in the recording, that's totally okay too.
Great, thank you. And I forgot to say again, my name is Rebecca Millemann, and I use she, her pronouns. So we are going to actually start with a video, and some of you may have seen this. It's a very sweet video that is called Sisters and Sweat, and it is featuring Serena Williams. And she is speaking to her daughter, who was a newborn at the time.
Baby girl, I won't mind if you play tennis badly. I won't mind if you choose to never pick up a racket. But I beg you, in this game of life, please keep playing no matter what. Just like it taught me, sports will teach you to be strong.
Lines on three. 1, 2, 3, line!
You'll discover the power and grace of your body. You'll learn to move, and you'll learn the way to move others. Sports will teach you the strength of your allies, whether your bond is by blood or by ball. Whether she shares the color of your skin or the color of your jersey, you'll find your sisters in sweat. Sometimes you'll score goals, sometimes you won't. But the goals you set, you'll reach together. You'll find the courage to stand tall, work harder, and speak louder on whatever playing field you choose in life. So keep playing, my girl. Keep playing.
For those of you who were involved with sports at any point in your life, maybe you played in the past, maybe you play currently, maybe you've coached, maybe you're a parent of an athlete or a family member or friend of an athlete, or if you have no connection to sports at all, it could also be another really important activity that you participated in your lifetime. So what we want to know is, what lessons have you learned from sports that have helped you in life? Okay, so hope you enjoyed speaking in your breakout rooms. Would love to hear from a few folks in the chat if you're willing to share the impact that sports has had on your life. So someone said confidence and self-image boost. Thank you. A sense of community, time management, accountability. Responsibility, teamwork, perseverance, challenging self. Awesome. Thank you all so much. So I wanted to offer a little bit of background about the program. So Athletes as Leaders was created about 5 or almost, I guess, 6 years ago now. And it was created specifically for a high school here in Seattle, Washington. And since then, we have been able to launch this program across the state of Washington through Team Up Washington, as well as across the country and really across the world. So we are happy to share it free of charge on athletesasleaders.org. We will be referring to a lot of the different resources on that website this evening. So feel free to check it out. And we also wanted to mention that this is really meant to be kind of a part 2. If you did not do the part 1, that is totally okay. But we do want to provide that in the chat for you. So if you go to athletesasleaders.org/training, you can access all of our recorded webinars there. And so if you look at webinar 1, that is the introductory webinar that will give you a nice overview of the program. And it will also give you a little bit more of the history and the context behind the program. And Monica and I are 2 of the authors, but there's actually 4 total, and all 4 of us presented on that webinar a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was just last week. So feel free to check that out. It's an hour long, and this webinar you're taking tonight, plus the webinar 1, together make a really nice, complete train the trainer for mentors. And mentors are going to be the people who are facilitating the program, who is this training tonight is intended for. So check it out.
Okay. Can y'all hear me? Or Rebecca, can you hear me? Okay. So the program is all about developing student athletes as leaders. It's a program that encourages athletes to create a safe and supportive community on their teams and at their schools. It's based on research and best practices in sexual assault prevention. We recommend this as a complement to other programs that involve men and boys in active prevention efforts. The boys teams in our community have done the Coaching Boys into Men program, and Athletes as Leaders was created so that women, girls, non-binary people, and gender non-conforming people could also have an active voice in creating a safe community. It's best practice to intentionally target all genders because everyone can play a role in preventing violence.
And this program is what we call, intended to be a social norms change program. So because this program is brief, it is only about 20 minutes once a week where athletes have these pretty brief conversations. There's not a lot of time, for example, for skills practice. And there's not a lot of time to dive really deeply into some of these topics. And so this is meant to be a really good conversation starter. And what it's really intended to do is have the athletes go into their community and spread the messages with their peers. And so we understand that athletes, when you think about a high school setting, athletes do tend to hold a lot of social capital. And what we mean by that is they tend to be students who have some social influence in their peer group. And so we know that at this age group, adolescents, they are very influenced by their peers. And so the model of this program is based on that. It's based on empowering athletes to use their platform, use their position of privilege as an athlete to speak up for what's right, and to create that community that they want to see for their school and for their team specifically. And so we really encourage them, and you'll see that throughout the whole program, that we are encouraging them to step up and to take this role seriously as a leader. And if you want to check it, research more, social norms theory is a really interesting thing to consider. So they've researched social norms, and they have found that, for example, at this age group, people's behavior is very influenced by what they think other people are doing. So for example, with drug and alcohol use, there's been a lot of research on college campuses. When the perception is that a lot of people at this school party a lot, then an individual's alcohol and drug use tends to go up when they think that that is the social norm, or that is the expectation of that community. And likewise, what we're trying to do with this program is say, hey, this is the expectation here. We want to create a safe and inclusive and welcoming environment for everyone here. How can we do that? And that is the new social norm that we want to create. So we're really leveraging the power of sports in our attempt to prevent violence.
Okay, so now we have another discussion question and we want to hear from you. So if you can write in the chat or unmute, what are some of the societal messages that are given to young people who are raised as girls to prevent rape and sexual assault? Don't dress provocatively, buddy system. Don't be a slut, but don't be a tease. Don't go anywhere alone. These are good. Keys between your fingers. Don't drink or cover your drink. Don't get drunk. Yeah, these are good. Sorry, I'm having allergies. So Athletes as Leaders is unique because unlike many other sexual assault prevention messages, it does not put the burden on people to protect themselves. So basically, we're trying to avoid all those things you all just said in the chat. These messages put the responsibility on people to protect themselves from being sexually assaulted. These messages ultimately tend to blame the victim instead of the person who actually perpetrated the assault. When creating this program, we wanted to think about the athletes on girls' teams specifically, and the harm they may be causing and how to prevent it. These include some of the more normalized forms of sexual assault and harassment, such as body shaming, harassment and bullying, including on social media, rumor spreading, sexual shaming, victim blaming, and reinforcing negative stereotypes about specific genders, racial groups, sexual orientations, and disabilities.
Thank you. So next, we are going to cover some of the specific roles in relation to the program Athletes as Leaders. So first of all, we have the mentor, and this is really who this training is designed for tonight. The mentor is going to be the person who's actually facilitating the program. And it's really important that they build a relationship with the team if they don't already have a close relationship with that team. And then they actually facilitate those conversations that happen weekly. Sometimes the mentor is the coach. Sometimes the mentor is an advocate, and sometimes the mentor is someone else altogether. So sometimes this program does involve partnering with someone else who can come in and mentor the team. So the athletes, as I said earlier, are the ones to set those team norms. This program is very reliant on the athletes to participate and very reliant on team leaders within that group to also participate and lead the conversations. The advocate is someone like me, for example, who works at a sexual assault or domestic violence program. They are usually highly trained in violence prevention. They are your content expert. They can help build key relationships with stakeholders in the community, help get the program started, coordinate a lot of the logistics, and maybe guide an evaluation. And then the coach is obviously the coach, the team administrator. If they're not the mentor, if they're not the ones facilitating, we do expect them to reinforce those key messages throughout the season. And they're also the connection with the parents. So identifying who the best mentor would be, who would be a good fit for the team, is a very key step. And this is sometimes where it differs a little bit with coaching boys into men, where sometimes we have to get a little bit more creative. So when identifying a mentor to facilitate the program, these are some factors that you might want to consider. These are not necessarily requirements, but at the end of the day, we want someone who's going to be credible with the topics that we're talking about, as well as relevant to the youth. And so some of our recommendations here came from many focus groups that youth have, participated in and told us what they feel would be best. So you do want to consider the identities of the mentor. So for example, with gender identity, in this program, you are talking about some pretty sensitive and nuanced topics, including sexual assault, relationship abuse, body image, body shaming, gender stereotypes, And so the mentor really needs to be aware of their personal experiences with these topics. And women, non-binary folks, gender non-conforming people, and individuals who have been raised as girls may have a deeper understanding, and probably will have a deeper understanding of these topics. And with that said, we also recognize that many girls' teams are coached by male identified coaches. And so sometimes the coach ends up being not a great fit. I've worked with many coaches who have told me, I would love to have you come in as a mentor. I don't personally feel comfortable talking about these issues, or I feel like it will come better coming from you or from an outside partner. And so in general, if it's a male identified coach, sometimes teams have to get creative in who they invite as the mentor. And the coach themselves is often going to be a great person to help make that decision of who that should be. You also want to consider the age. Many young people have said that they like to hear from near peers, and I'll just openly admit I am not a near peer. A near peer is someone who generally is fairly close in age, but maybe a little bit older. And so that's who young people have told us they would prefer to hear from. So someone maybe within about 10 years. Diverse mentors. So you want to consider the other identities that your mentors bring, because they are role models, they are community builders, they are facilitators, and the teams will benefit from having mentors with identities that are both similar and different from their own. And so that's also something to consider. And you want to make sure that you're reflecting the diversity of the community that you're serving. And also the training and skills and experience that person brings. So hopefully they have had some advanced training in some of the topics covered in this program, but at the minimum, we want to make sure that at least they take this training that we're offering tonight, which is what we call the Mentor Train the Trainer, as well as the overview, which is you'll find on webinar 1. But even better than these webinars would really be an in-person training or a personal connection with a local advocate. And if you're in Washington State, we can make sure that you are connected with a local advocate who can, spend a little bit more time helping you implement this program and make it successful and make sure everyone is trained. As you know, if you're involved with sports, we need folks, we need our coaches and our mentors to commit to the full season. We do not want people leaving halfway. Those relationships are so important. And so we want to make sure we have that commitment. And then lastly, someone who, this is really the only absolute requirement, but someone who's really passionate about creating a safe and respectful community for everyone. And so again, your mentors can be your coaches, your mentors can be your advocates, your mentors can also be high school alumni from the team, college athletes from local universities who we've had great luck with coming in and offering this maybe as an internship. We have had volunteers, we have had older siblings of the athletes, we've had head coaches, assistant coaches, we have also had team captains themselves facilitate the program. So next, what I wanted to do was actually show the website live. And so I want to just show everyone some of the resources that are available. So here is the Athletes as Leaders website. And I want to point out a couple things. So we do have some advocates on the call tonight. Thank you for being here. And the advocates, basically each of these tabs up here are going to be different toolkits. So we have the program, which I'll show you in a bit. We have the advocates tab. And so this offers really a step-by-step almost tutorial on what an advocate should consider when starting this up in a community or supporting a community to do this program. Okay, so it kind of goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, walking you through step by step. And then if you scroll all the way down, you'll find these toolkits. And these toolkits are all of the resources that we will be mentioning tonight. So for those of you who are watching the recording right now, we are on athletesasleaders.org/advocates. And this is what we call the Advocate Toolkit. So just on the last slide, I was talking about who would be a good fit as a mentor. There's a document right here called Mentors Finding a Good Fit, and that will take you right to that document and that guidance. We also have sample parent letters. So if you want to inform the parents on the team that this program is happening, you can use this as a template. And let's say you're doing coaching boys into men with the boys teams at your school, and you're doing athletes as leaders with the girls teams at your school. This is a sample letter that you can send to everyone, and put it on your letterhead, give them the contact information for the head coach and the advocate. If the parents have any concerns, they can contact you, but also it tells them this website, and so the parents can go on there and review the content as well. The trainings are going to be these recorded webinars that we are, one of them being recorded tonight. We also have, I want to point out this first one, the Advocate Implementation Guide. And that's the one that will really walk you through step-by-step how to build relationships in the community, all the way to implementation to evaluation. So check that out. Next, I want to point out the Mentors tab, because this is the toolkit that's really for you, the folks who are going to be facilitating the program. So again, here's your step-by-step, what you need to do pre-season, during the season, and post-season. And then again, the toolkit. So tonight, again, is the Train the Trainer, and the facilitation guide for mentors here is going to be a great tool for you. And a lot of the information in this little booklet we're actually covering tonight, but it will give you additional tips for facilitating the program that will help make it successful. And lastly, I'm going to go straight into the program here. So for those of you who are really familiar with the program, we have this little pop-up box, and this part is new. So when you first access this for the first time, it will have a little pop-up box that has you agree to the terms and conditions, which is basically a licensing agreement saying that you agree to these terms and conditions. And if you want to read that, they're also located down here at the very bottom. And it basically says that you have permission to use this program free of charge, and you are welcome to make adaptations to the program to meet the needs of your community. And if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to us as well. And so here we are in the program. And I'm going to show you just, Monica is actually going to model one of these lessons for you tonight, but I'm going to just open an earlier lesson to just give you an example. So let's go to session 4, which is addressing misinformation and bias. Okay. And I just want to show you what these sessions actually look like. And this should all be mobile friendly as well. So you have the option to print these out and put it in a binder, for example, or a little packet, but you can also, a lot of our mentors facilitate it straight from their phone or a tablet. So feel free to use it that way as well. So in session 4, which the title is Addressing Misinformation and Bias, at the very beginning of the lesson, you will see a little prep section. And so this is what the mentor needs to do ahead of time. And the coach can sometimes help with this, as well as the advocate. So it will give you things that you should have handy or have prepared ahead of time. Then you're going to see these review the key messages. This is not meant to be read out loud right off the bat to the athletes, but it's rather meant as something to really ground that mentor. So I'm going to read these ahead of time before I meet with my athletes, and I'm going to ground myself in, okay, what are we talking about today? So for example, in this lesson, it is many people have received misinformation about specific groups of people, and we need to educate ourselves to avoid bias. And then next, we can help create a community that is safe and welcoming for people, including all sexual orientations and abilities, disabilities. And then it will jump into 3 sections. One is the warm-up, and each little subsection will give you a time suggestion, and they should be about 20 minutes for every session. So the warm-up is usually the introduction to the topic. We used to have videos. We have now removed those to make them more accessible to communities and try to keep it current. So sometimes it's an introduction, sometimes it's a super short activity. Then you have the workout, which are going to be discussion questions. And those are usually, you're going to find those in bold with these little purple question marks. And usually this is done in a large group setting. But if you have a super, super big team, like I have worked with track teams that have 90 people on them, you can also break into small groups and have some of your team leaders lead the discussions. So that's your workout. And then lastly, we have the talking points, which is basically things that you want to mention if the athletes have not already brought them up. And then the last section is the cool down. And this is what we call the team talk. This is really important to do in the large group because this is where you set your team norms. So you're going to bring everybody together so they can really see and hear each other and really try to have your team leaders lead this conversation. And those are your questions to close it out. And again, you'll find those in bold for easy reference. We also always like to end everything with a team cheer, which can be a really fun way to close the group. So basically, that's how it works. This is all scripted. You can just literally read the script. You can go off script and put it in your own words, but you can also just read it. And any instructions to the facilitator will be in little brackets. So you can see here, for example, during the team talk, you may choose to have specific athletes and leaders to facilitate the team talk. When it's in brackets, those are just instructions to the mentor.
Hey, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Someone asked in the chat, do you have any examples of how people have made adaptations?
That is a great question. So I do not have any official guidance around adaptations. I know Coaching Boys into Men has actually been able to study some adaptations, and they've been able to give official guidance around that. But what I recommend is, and I'll try to find it and put it in the chat, but there's really great guidance from the CDC, I think in the NSVRC, which is the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, around how to adapt programs. So I will try to find that and put that in the chat. But I have heard of people who have adapted this for younger audiences or older audiences. I have also heard of people adapting this outside of the sports setting. So doing this with different types of groups, not necessarily athletes. I've also heard people use this in athletic organizations and not necessarily in high school settings. And then I've also heard of people doing cultural adaptations. So adaptations are welcome. I think they're encouraged to meet the needs of your community, and you will know your community the best. And I think the best guidance I can give is looking at those key messages. Those were really meant to be grounding for each lesson that really will provide some key concepts that you can help follow, but put in your own language to meet the needs of the young people. And then we also, you'll see in the guide, in the facilitation guide, there's also the goals of the program outlined. So those might be helpful as well. Okay, so I will just put it out there. It is helpful sometimes if you have more than 20 minutes for the first and the last session, because your introductions are really important, and we do a really great icebreaker where folks get to know each other and create those group agreements, which are going to be critical because these are some sensitive and sometimes difficult conversations. Then we go into understanding privilege and oppression. Challenging harmful stereotypes is lesson 3. Addressing misinformation and bias, which is the one I just showed you as an example. And then session 5 is unpacking beauty standards, which Monica is going to be demonstrating for us in just a bit. Session 6 is ending rumor spreading and shaming. 7 is promoting consent. 8 is fostering healthy relationships. 9 is building community. And then 10 is, I can't see it because it's cut off, celebrating our successes. So celebrating is, of course, ending everything with a party, but also we do a recognition circle and conduct an evaluation if you choose to do that. Okay, so really briefly, this is some new guidance that we did not have in the last edition that we want to share. So it's going to be really important for folks to partner with their student athletes. If you can think of it this way, that you want athletes to do most of the talking. And if that is possible, you need to find an adult facilitator or a young person who's willing to facilitate, who's really going to let the athletes do the talking and let them be the experts of their peer group and of their team. And so what that means is approach some of your athletes on your team. I love to consider the folks who are kind of natural leaders, maybe the upperclassmen, maybe the team captains, but I also love to engage folks who are not who you might traditionally think of as leaders. Like, let's make sure we're thinking of everyone, because there might be people that have deep knowledge on some of these topics, and we want to be engaging them to lead some of the conversation. That can be in a large group or in a small group. Sometimes I like to show the athletes the questions ahead of time, and I might even show them the key messages ahead of time and ask them, for example, hey, would you be willing to be one of the first people to speak up when I ask that first question? Because once the athletes get it going, it's a lot easier to keep it going. And so that's our guidance on making sure that youth leaders are kind of leading this.
Okay, there's a lot of information within this slide, so bear with me. But take time on your own to reflect on your own personal experiences and how they relate to the topics. It's okay to share a brief personal reflection about how you relate to the topic. Model good boundaries, however, and don't share anything that an athlete, parent, or administrator may think is inappropriate based on your role. Prepare for each session in advance. Put yourself in the shoes of the athletes you'll be working with, and think about what they will want to get out of the session, or how they might answer the questions, and think about the week's topics. While it's okay to read from the script, it will be much more engaging to speak authentically with the group, so try to prepare and study the content ahead of time. Be inclusive of all gender identities. Keep in mind that not all athletes who play on girls' teams may identify as a girl or a lady. When getting the group's attention, try to avoid "okay, ladies," and instead use more inclusive terms like athletes, the school mascot, or the sport's name, like "okay, wrestlers," or something like that. Be inclusive of all sexual and romantic orientations. For example, in the relationships lesson, the introduction includes the following statements. When we are talking about relationships today, we are talking about all types of relationships with a partner, like people who are dating, hanging out, hooking up, or just friends. This applies to all sexual orientations, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, straight, etc. Assume that some are dating already and some are not. Some may have experienced consensual sexual activity, others have not. It's very likely you will already have athletes who have experienced sexual assault or abuse. So sensitivity reminders are scripted in the lesson. Create a culture of consent or permission. This means that facilitators will not ask athletes personal questions or to disclose any more than they are comfortable with. While participation and engagement can be encouraged and even incentivized, no athlete should be forced to participate. With that said, it is certainly okay to call on a particular person or group, such as, is anyone on this side of the room willing to share? Or, Maya, what do you think? Or whoever. Watch the clock. The 20 minutes goes by fast. Aim to get a few responses to each question and get the conversation back on track quickly if they get off subject. Keep it moving. For the cool down, you can use a beanbag or ball or other sports equipment that the team uses to pass around like a talking piece. So only the person with the ball should be speaking. The ball does not need to be passed consecutively around the circle. Instead, athletes can throw the ball across the circle to their teammate who is ready. Depending on the energy level, you can encourage active movement or encourage rest and relaxation. Lastly, your enthusiastic approach and encouragement goes a long way. They have already had a long day and this should not feel like school. Try to make it fun. If you have the funding for snacks, we recommend it. Try to be enthusiastic and validate their responses. Show empathy and concern for the sensitive topics.
Thanks, Monica. Okay, and then lastly, before we jump into session 5, we wanted to give some guidance about how to build relationships with teams. And so coaches, if you're on the call tonight, I would love for you to share some additional things in the chat. So if you had an outsider coming in, or a new coach who was just joining your team, or a volunteer who was coming in to mentor your team, what would you want them to do to build relationships with your team? I would love to hear from you as well. So this is from my experience mentoring teams. And again, I'm not a member of that community. I don't play that sport necessarily. I didn't go to that high school necessarily. And, you know, for me, I am also a lot older than them. And so it is important for me to kind of prove myself and show them that I do care about them and their team. And I do recognize that, you know, what we're talking about is serious and sensitive. And a lot of it is built on rapport. And so what I love to do is I like to show up. I like to physically show up. So showing up to practices, showing up to games and cheering them on and bringing signs. Then when we get back to the group next week, I can follow up and be like, oh, that was a great play, or what a great game. Also, if the team's not doing well that season, it's good to know, because that's hard. And so it's good to track their status. I would even watch some of their games sometimes if they were you know, televised on a sports app, like the softball team, for example, would have someone recording it, and just keep up with their stats, because it's a good way to connect. And also learning the athletes' names is very important. Make sure we are pronouncing people's names correctly. And I used to go to the games and study rosters just to learn their names, but also in the groups, have people share their name before they speak is a good way to do it. Ask the team leaders to help you. I always ask to meet with the team captains ahead of time before we start the program. Get to know what they think the dynamics are of the team. Sometimes I've worked with teams that have great group dynamic, total team environment, and others there has been some rift caused and there's some division. And so it is good to know about that ahead of time if athletes feel comfortable sharing that with you. Communicate really closely with the coach. You know, we're in Seattle, we have to be flexible. Things get rained out, things get rescheduled, especially in the spring. And so we had to be super flexible. Things often would change last minute. So that's important too. And then of course, modeling good boundaries. So I'm not trying to be friends with them per se. I'm not going to be sharing personal information about my own relationships with them. So at the end of the day, I am still a professional and I need to model those boundaries with them as well. So all of these things are important when you're getting to know the athletes that you're working with.
Hey,
Okay.
Rebecca, there's a few questions that maybe we can answer really quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, just so everyone knows, I think we're going to try to respond to questions verbally just for people who are watching this later. But one of the questions is, for the physical space / setup of the group, do you suggest people sit in a circle or just whatever seems best for the group?
That is a great question. So we love it if there is room for everyone in a circle. And I've done this with many teams where we were able to sit on, you know, gymnastics, we were able to sit on the mats and be comfortable and all see each other. But then you get to a certain amount where the team is just very, very big. And so, for example, I worked with a girls' soccer team, and the team captains really felt it would be really nice to bring JVC, JV, and varsity together. So in case you're not familiar with those terms, sometimes a school will have 3 different levels of the same sport. And so sometimes it's maybe a freshman team with all 9th graders, junior varsity, and then varsity. And they felt from the mentorship perspective, it'd be nice to have everyone together. Well, it ended up being a lot of people, right? So for that, I think it's okay for your workout when you're doing the discussion to break up into small groups. And then sometimes you just don't have the space, and you sometimes are in a classroom setting or even a locker room. Sometimes you're doing this on a bus going to a practice location. I've worked in some really tiny, not ideal spaces. And so you just got to make it work. And this is one of the reasons why we removed the videos. We wanted it to be accessible on any field, any court, indoor, outdoor, or even while doing transportation.
Another question is, what if the athletes get totally involved on topics? Do you cut them off or continue at another session?
Oh, that's a great question. So this is really hard. And I have worked with coaches who directly see the value of the program and actually see it improving teamwork, for example, and they have given us more time. So, and I've only had that a few times, because practice time is really important. there's often a minimum number of minutes they have to practice before the first competition. And I know I'm not telling you anything new for those of you who are coaches. So there's always a crunch, right? Someone's using the field right before you and someone's using the field right after you. So we don't want to cut into practice time for any more than the coach has given us. So if they tell me 20 minutes, I'm going to stick to my 20 minutes, and I will have to cut people off. And I will have to say, for the sake of time, I'm so sorry, but we need to move on. And sometimes we'll have to skip one of the discussion questions. But occasionally you will have a coach that says, you know what, go ahead and take 25 minutes. And that can help too. It just depends on how those conversations go, but you do have to be adaptable and know when to kind of move the conversation along.
Those were the only questions so far.
Okay.
I just wanted to get through those before we ask people to put stuff in the chat and then we lose them.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much for facilitating that. Okay, so now it is time for us to experience what it is like to go through this program. And so Monica is going to be our mentor this evening, and the rest of us are going to pretend that we are athletes. And we don't really need you to do any acting. We just want you to participate really almost as yourself, give us your genuine answers, but we want to make this participatory. And trust me, this is way more fun if you can do it in person, but we're going to do it online and we're going to give it a shot. So normally we would have folks move around the room. We would be throwing a ball or some kind of talking piece to each other. And we would keep it fun, keep it moving, keep it interactive. So if you could help us out, that would be fantastic. If you are willing to turn your camera off and unmute, of course, much appreciated, but also you can feel free to participate in the chat. So session 5 that Monica is going to model is called Unpacking Beauty Standards. And the key concepts that you will probably hear come out as she is facilitating is number 1, there's no right or wrong way to have a body. Number 2, no one should feel pressured to look or present in a certain way. And then number 3, avoid making comments about people's bodies. And Monica, you can take it away.
Yes. Okay, so welcome everybody. Last session, let's pretend, we talked about addressing misinformation and bias. Today we're going to talk about unpacking beauty standards. From a very young age, people receive messages about beauty standards from products, peers, the media, and their communities. Of course, we know these messages differ for certain communities, such as women and girls, people of color, people with larger bodies, the LGBTQ+ community, disabled folks, and so on. And of course, there's an intersectional element to all those things. For me, for example, I'm plus size, a woman, a person of color, queer, so I have a myriad of different messages being aimed at me. Many of these beauty standards are unrealistic and impossible to achieve. Oftentimes, people feel pressure to change their body or appearance to fit this image. There's so much judgment about how people look, and that can take focus away from other amazing things that people are doing in their lives. Beauty standards make people feel bad about themselves. Negative comments on people's appearance and bodies are so common that we often may not notice the damage they cause. Social media encourages us to compare ourselves to other people. It's important to remember that people's photos are often staged, perfectly posed, filtered, and airbrushed. There are people, influencers, and companies who profit from making people feel bad about their appearance. So now we're going to get into some discussion questions. If you want to unmute or write in the chat.
Monica, this is Martin. I've heard that straight hair is best. As an African American, Native American, having afro kinky hair is not the beauty standard.
That's a good one. What else?
I've heard one, thin is everything. You've got to be thin.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. Someone else wrote in the chat. Oh, sorry.
You're good. I was just gonna say something I see a lot. Can I go or sorry?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Something I see a lot, or I guess I don't see a lot, is like stretch marks. They're so common on all body sizes, and you just never see them. They're common on all genders, and they're like never in media. They're just completely like brushed over.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. So people wrote in the chat, thin is beautiful, fat is ugly. Thin is also healthy. Facial hair on women is not acceptable.
Let me say something that happened to me. I was always ridiculed because my nose to everybody else was too big.
Yeah, a lot of beauty standards are very Eurocentric, and that happens to mean having a thin nose.
On the opposite end of being fat, sometimes people can be too thin. Some people may say they just need to eat a sandwich or eat an olive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was me. They called me bag of bones.
I know something. I know I was just sharing with my small group that I have a niece that played basketball through college. And I remember, I think it was her junior year when I went to see her play in Maryland. And I remember she was the one athlete that came out in heels and all that stuff. And all the other female athletes came out with their regular dress. I'm like, why are you standing out? But this was the opposite. She said, because I don't want people to associate or identify me as being gay. So she struggled with most of her teammates were LGBTQ, and she just wanted to make sure that she wasn't clumped in. But I'm like thinking, but you should be able to dress whichever way you want to. And she goes, I know, but I struggle with that. So I thought that was an interesting shift in for her as the athlete being part of the team.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, we got some more in the chat. Any kind of hair on feminine people? Oh, in shopping malls, mannequins are thin. Very few real, quote unquote, size models. That's a good one. And even the ones that are supposed to be plus size are still pretty small. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, how do you think messages about beauty standards differ for certain communities like women, girls, people of color, and so on?
I remember when Simone Biles won her first gymnastics, it was very frustrating that the media was focusing on how her hair was as opposed to on her athleticism. That was terrible.
Mm-hmm. What else?
I think in certain communities, having a big butt is considered beautiful. And in other communities, that's not. And as a white girl, you know, thin and petite, like you were saying, Eurocentric beauty was highlighted. Being blonde was highlighted. That was what you wanted to be. But I know some of my friends who are from different cultures, you know, being more blessed with the behind or voluptuous, maybe be seen as more beautiful than a skinny girl.
Mm-hmm.
Even just the differences between rural and urban areas too. Like I live in a town that's less than 2,000 people, and compared to larger cities like Milwaukee or Madison, what would be considered plus size or overweight for more urban areas may be kind of more of a norm for a rural setting.
I think if people wants to hate, they'll find something, because I have heard, I mean, Black people, I think most Black people that I've spoken with love Serena and what she does and her figure and everything. And I've heard white people say her butt's too big, you know, so people are gonna find something to hate about.
Yeah.
I think too, like something that I've noticed specifically in the queer community is like not looking queer enough, which I don't even know what that means, but it happens a lot. And I think that is addressed in sports, just like Evelyn was saying, like how do you differentiate yourself through haircuts, style, makeup, and it's like pushed on people a lot that they have to dress or look a certain way if they are or aren't queer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the talking points, I'm supposed to kind of cherry pick the ones you guys or you all didn't say, but y'all touched on so many of these. So I might just read through all of them. Let's see. There's no right or wrong way to have a body. Someone's body is not measurement of their worth. Avoid commenting on other people's bodies, except maybe if you're trying to help a friend with an embarrassment. To avoid embarrassment with an easy fix, like picking something out of their teeth or wiping something off their face. Social media, especially filters, contribute to unrealistic beauty standards, racism, negative body image, and lack of confidence. Remember, you can choose who you follow. Unfollowing or blocking people who make you feel bad about yourself is a form of self-care. It's never okay to fat shame others. People with larger bodies deserve love and respect like everyone else. They are often mistreated in the medical field, the fashion industry, and in everyday life. Do your part to ensure that all bodies are respected. Clothes, hairstyles, and makeup are all forms of self-expression. They can be representative of people's cultures or communities. People should feel free to present themselves however they're comfortable with, and we should celebrate that. When we go against society's beauty standards and maintain that there is no right or wrong way to look or present, then we are also fighting against harmful gender and racial stereotypes. There are many things that we as society need to unlearn. We need to unlearn that we have to have wrinkle and scar-free skin, that we're not allowed to gain weight or lose weight for that matter, that we need to tan or lighten our skin, that our body image defines our worth. So here's the challenge for you. When you see a new person at school, pretend you're in school, catch yourself before judging their body, skin, hair, and clothes. Instead, get to know them. When you compliment a friend, see if it can first be about their personality, something they're good at, or something great that they did. As student leaders and athletes, it's important for you to challenge harmful beauty standards and look at people more closely for who they really are. So now it's time for the team talk. This is typically when you'd have them throw a ball or something like that. We're going to think of things that you can all do as student leaders and athletes. Hopefully these will be things everyone in the group can agree to do when you are interacting with people on your team, at school, on social media, or in the community. We are hoping they will become the new team norms that will help you take action as leaders in the community. This week, we're going to brainstorm ways that we can challenge society's messages about beauty and promote a positive self-image. Another question we have is, what beauty standards would you like to unlearn, and how can you unlearn them?
Something I try to teach my daughter, and that I'm not sure when I learned it myself, but oftentimes just the word fat is seen as a bad word or almost like a cuss word. And what I've taught my daughter, or what I try to teach her, she's a preteen, is that, like I'm a middle-aged woman and I have some fat, and that's okay, but sometimes if I'm not even talking about like I'm fat or skinny or unhealthy or fit. I'm not talking about it in that way. But if I'm just talking about like scientifically, actually, I have fat on certain areas and I have muscle on certain areas, but just saying the word fat is seen as such a negative word. And I'm trying to teach my daughter that it's not a negative word, it's an actual substance, and it's okay to have fat. It's okay to be fat. Fat doesn't equal beauty at all in any way. And I'm trying to also, say it when her friends are around, because I think it's a real problem.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like the term fat has kind of been reclaimed by that community, kind of like the term queer, how that used to be used kind of derogatorily. So I totally get your point. Any other comments?
Yeah, I did want to just kind of something that I've heard a lot, like basically through like my kids themselves, and then also like other kids that we see, basically being of the Hispanic heritage or Latino, the darkness of the skin, and like especially in the summer times, people are like, I don't like to get dark, I don't like to, you know, look a certain way, you know, there's a certain, you know, they don't want that. And I always preach to like my kids and everybody else, I'm like, that's beautiful, you know what I mean? That's something that like you should be proud of, you know, everybody should be proud of certain things. So I guess it's just kind of, I don't know how to make them unlearn it other than just me letting them know that it is okay, you know, that it is something that to be proud of, you know, regardless. Or even if you are like, let's say pale and you can't tan, I mean, it's nothing wrong with that either. Like everybody is different, everybody's born different, everybody's born unique, you know. And I just, you know, I would hope that we could teach the kids that, you know, to love themselves regardless of what they look like, you know. It's not, you know, that serious, I guess. So that's just my favorite.
Thank you.
Good point. Thanks for mentioning.
And I was thinking of like how people that are fat aren't supposed to wear like crop tops or go shirtless, kind of things like that. And I think it's been able to be more of a norm to be like, who cares? Like, it's hot outside. You should be able to wear a crop top if you want, like, or things like that. Like, wear those shorts, kinds of things. Just doing more of a community uplift.
I love that. Some people wrote in the chat, one person said, unlearning that there is only one way to have a fit, healthy body, acknowledging skill, effort, etc., instead of physical attributes. Another person said, shifting to gratitude for our bodies that allow us to do the things we love and feel the things we feel. Love those. I think I'll go on to the next question just for time's sake. Okay. Oh wait, did I go to the one after that on accident? Yes, I did. Sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna go to what are some positive things to notice or comment on about someone other than their appearance? I haven't done that one, right?
Right.
Okay.
Their thoughtfulness.
Thoughtfulness, that's a good one.
Or like if you see a parent that's just having a bad day, just let them know that they're doing a good job.
Some people said their positive attitude, their accomplishments, their effort.
For team members, maybe their inclusivity.
Love that. Someone said, I always comment on people's sense of humor or creative thinking. Another person said, fun playing. Okay, also I'm just gonna, again, put that question I accidentally put first. How can we use social media to promote the different ways we present ourselves? For example, when sharing or commenting on a picture or video.
Having a mindset of, if we wouldn't say it to someone else, why would we say it about ourselves? Kind of a thing. Like I think Dove did a beauty campaign on it where they had people write down what they thought of themselves and had people act it out, and they're like, can't believe they would say that, and things like that.
That's a good one.
You know, I like when I see a good, I just saw, I forget his name, it's terrible. And I have TikTok because I got to keep up with my grandbabies. Okay. So I just saw a nice TikTok yesterday, and the focus was on body shaming. It was about a a dance group auditioning for dance, and the other thin ladies on the dance team were body shaming a full-figured woman that was wanting to dance. But it was a good 3-minute video, TikTok rather, or whatever. But it was so positive at the end. The full-figured woman ended up being part of the team, and how it was beautiful. So how I use social media, trust me, I sent it to half of the world and half of the family on my contacts, because I thought about that was good positive messaging, and telling how the thin one that was constantly body shaming did not make the team. So it was great.
Someone
Watch
said
it. I may share with all of you guys. Watch.
Someone said uplifting others by leaving comments on how great something they are doing is. It's a good one. Okay, I think I'm just gonna finish up here. So thank you all for your participation and great ideas. You all have awesome ideas on how to push back against beauty standards and judgments on appearance. It's time to break for the day. And this is usually when they would do a team cheer. Rebecca, do you have one?
Yes, let's do it. We're gonna do it. Okay, so I think because we don't all go to the same high school, but we are all part of the Team Up Washington tonight. So I think we should do Team Up on 3. So we're gonna pretend that we're doing a huddle, and we're gonna put our hands in. And so put your hands in the huddle all together in the circle. And I'm gonna count down from 3, and then we're gonna yell Team Up. Okay, ready? 3. Oh wait, sorry. We're gonna yell Team Up and then throw up your hands out of the huddle. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. You're gonna say Team Up, and then we're gonna throw our hands up. Ready? All right. 3, 2, 1. Team Up. For those of you who are experienced facilitators, I would love to hear you share your expertise right now. So like in the chat, feel free to share, like, what do you do when groups are really quiet and aren't really answering you the discussion questions? How do you increase participation? Or the other flip side is sometimes you have a group that is super talkative and maybe 1 or 2 people that maybe are dominating a conversation. So those experienced facilitators in the room, if you could share a couple tips, we would appreciate it, with either a quiet group or the other extreme where it's like you need certain people to stop talking.
I think open-ended questions give you more, but if people aren't jumping in, a yes, no. So okay. Ours was on rumors. So instead of what's a time you stopped a rumor, which it could be like a big intimidating, but like, have you ever heard a rumor about yourself? How many of us? Have you ever shared a rumor? Like a yes, no is an easier in to get them talking, or an agree or disagree. Like, you know, someone told me they think rumors are worse in high school than they used to be, and I kind of think they're better. And then it's like, you're choosing between the two, but now they're saying maybe a sentence and a why, rather than just a question from scratch where they just have to blue sky think it.
That is great advice. Yes. And, you know, when we were writing this program, we did intentionally try to make everything really open-ended. But when you do have kind of a quiet group, or you just kind of need to get everyone right up front participating, I love this idea of doing the yes, no questions. You know, you can do a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle to kind of gauge, or have people, you know, have you heard of this going on? Just an easy yes, no question, like you said. That's great advice. And I see some other folks in the chat. So like with quiet students, if the group is quiet, maybe hearing an example from the mentor or the teacher or the coach first, it does soften the environment. Yes. So as a facilitator, as the mentor, you know, humanizing yourself, it is okay to share personal examples, again, with boundaries, right? We want to not share anything about our own like intimate or romantic relationships, for example. That would be inappropriate. But, you know, sharing maybe some of the messages that you've heard in society or being raised, like for me, being raised as a girl, these were some of the things that were taught to me. That can help soften the environment and get the conversation going. Someone said I try to be super positive. Like kids love it when I get excited that they responded. I actually do the same thing as you. I feel like kids will mimic your attitude and really pick up on the vibes, definitely. We usually have a co-facilitator, so we chat between us and try to draw the kids in that way. That's awesome. That's a really good one. Okay, great. So, oh yes, if you don't get responses right away, rephrasing the question is helpful. Another thing that some of our expert athletes as leaders, mentors have told us is writing things on a board if you have them, or even like we did with Monica facilitating, you know, having slides with the questions can help for visual learners. And this program was intended to be taught in person, but people have gotten really creative during this pandemic and they have facilitated this online. So they've made, you know, nice engaging slides and stuff like that. Okay, so now we're going to move into questions. We have only just a couple minutes. So I just want to see if anyone has any remaining questions. And then I also will give you our contact information in the chat so you can reach out to us. So we do have 3 minutes left. And so we'll probably have time for a couple questions, but we will also put our contact information in the chat for you to reach out to both Team Up Washington and the Athletes as Leaders team. Okay. So
Rebecca.
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, Rebecca. Bobby Casey.
Hi.
Quick question. Now, we did this one for Athletes to Leaders. You ran the program for coaching boys to men last week. Did you also audio tape that? Did you videotape that one as well?
Yes, Eileen. Do you want to say where they can find that?
Yep, we recorded it. It's actually already up thanks to Anna on our YouTube channel for Wiskative. I'll put the link in the chat, and then we'll also send out the link when we send out all the links from today's webinar to you for Athletes as Leaders. But it's a great combo to do them together. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you.
We got another pro tip in the chat that says the key for the facilitator is to be familiar with the session, and it's very important so that the messages can be more of a conversation as opposed to reading the lessons. Absolutely. And, you know, even having helped write this program, I do often have to read things the first time I'm doing it. But after you've mentored a couple teams, you start to kind of get your groove and not memorize it, but you kind of know what to say and you can put it in your own words and it just becomes more natural over time. But co-facilitating also really helps because let's say Monica and I are doing it together. You know, I'll be like, okay, Monica, you do the first talking point, I'll do the second one. So while she's reading or saying her talking point, I can read ahead what I'm going to say next and then say it more naturally so I'm not reading. Someone else said I missed the beginning, but can the coach be the mentor? And the answer is yes, but it is really important to think about who would be the best fit, particularly for girls teams and with this content. So we do have some guidance on our website. If you click on the Advocate Toolkit, there's a document called Mentors, Finding a Good Fit. And we covered that earlier in the webinar, so it will also be in the recording as well. Great. Okay, I think it's time for our team cheer because it's the end of the evening. And we have a training evaluation, which we'd appreciate you filling out, but we'll also send it out. I will also put our contact information, or hopefully one of my teammates can do that. So for Athletes as Leaders, we have the contact page and you can reach us there. For the Team Up Washington, it's just teamupwashington@gmail.com. And whoever suggested the Badgers, I think we got to go with that one.
Before we do our team cheer, I just have one more thing to really encourage folks. I put in the chat all of for Washington State programs or Washington State folks, there are links to finding a domestic violence program, finding a sexual assault program in the chat. I'm also happy to put that wherever you want. And then you can always just go to thehotline.org if you're a national organization or national coach, or around the state, or if you're a Badger in Wisconsin, you get to connect. That is the best thing I can say. Like, if you haven't done that, your advocates in your communities want to meet with you. They'll be so delighted. And that is the thing that's going to make your work the most successful. So thanks to the advocates who are on the call with us. You make our lives better. And coaches, thank you for all the work that you do in your communities. It is so much and so appreciated. And I know you don't get paid enough to do it. So I just know that you're doing it because you care, and just really want to appreciate all of you. And thanks to Rebecca and Monica for leading us through this expert level training. We really appreciate you. And I just so love being in partnership with you. So with that, lead us in the cheer.
Okay, so this is gonna be our closing huddle. We're gonna go hands in again. And on the count of 3, I'm gonna count down and we're gonna say, go Badgers. And then we're gonna throw the hands up. All right, everybody ready for go Badgers? Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Go Badgers.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you all for
everybody.
being here so much, and have a good rest of your evening and rest of your summer. Take care.